Right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Your Excellencies, I'm sorry that we are running late, but I'm just trying to give you a taste of Egypt, just so you know that this is what happens. Our next session is sharing experiences with the rest of the world on competitiveness. And again, I'm quite honored, and I thank His Excellency Ambassador Jose Tripp for giving me the opportunity and giving us the opportunity to meet with a pro-Mexico delegation that is headed by Mr. Paulo Carreno, Director General for Pro-Mexico. And with your permission, what we will do, because he has a meeting with one of our ministers in a bit, so I will start with him on a one-on-one session, just 2 questions, 3 questions to direct, and then I will let you and the delegation move, and then we will start our final panel of the day. If you can please join me on stage. All right, Ambassador Jose, thank you again for being here. And you escaped from me this time. But we have Pro-Mexico with us here, and I had a fantastic opportunity to meet with them before the break and get a sentiment and a feel for the appetite that Mexican companies, and it's not just Pro-Mexico that is here, it's also private sector. And we are hoping that we will be able to announce good things in the future, and hopefully Global Trade Matters and Pro-Mexico finalize our Memorandum of Understanding and Cooperation. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to make these questions easy. There's a lot of dynamics going on around the world. We talked about globalization, we talked about competitiveness, we talked about economic structure reforms that have been happening. Changes need to be done. Mexico is performing quasi on the Global Competitiveness Index, despite having such a big market, despite its proximity to large markets like NAFTA and the rest of Latin America. So how, in your opinion, do you think that with these volatile changes happening in globalization and free trade and protectionism, how is Mexico faring, and how will Mexico survive these turbulences of global trade retraction, in essence?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, Dr. Ashraf, for inviting Mexico, inviting Pro-Mexico. I would like to very briefly, with all my heart, salute all the ambassadors here present. Farewell, Ambassador. Sanjay, have a safe trip home, and Turkey, of course, and apologize again because we literally need to run. Now, coming back to your question, Mexico, it's an economy, it's a country that 30 years ago literally changed its whole political and economic outlook. 30 years ago, 3 decades ago, Mexico decided to choose a path of open economy. And by doing so, it has, during already 2 political transitions and 4, almost 5 governments, different governments, has become one of the most open economies in the world. Right now we have 12 free trade agreements that gives us access to 46 countries. Once our Senate goes through the passing of CPTPP, we're going to be open to 52 economies. To give you an example, if you put together the free access that Canada, United States, Brazil, and Argentina have all combined, they will reach 50. So this gives you a very good flavor of what Mexico has been doing in the last 30 years. This is not something that started right now. Yes, we are in a context in which the whole model is into a very thorough debate. In fact, we are in negotiation starting this week, the perhaps last round with the free trade agreement of North America. We just finished a couple of weeks ago the update of our free trade agreement with the European Union. But we do believe that regardless of the obstacles, regardless of the challenges that you will find in an open economy, it's always better for your businessmen, for your country, for your economy to have an open free trade economy than rather a closed one. And that has been our experience so far. Now, to your point of competitiveness in particularly, on the one hand, you need to have the open free trade economy to have access to the rest of the world. And when you say have access, it's not the country itself, but it's access for your businessmen. But on the other hand, you need a strong political, legal framework. And hence the structural reforms that you mentioned a few seconds ago. This government, the government that is ending next November, went through the process of making happen and pushing 13 structural reforms. 6 of them practically not just correlated, but aimed to foster foreign direct investment. I'm talking about energy, for example. We opened an economy that was closed for 70 years. Our energetic reform did that. Telecommunications as well. We have competition now. Economic competence as well, antitrust law. Fiscal, one not so popular as you can imagine for our business sector, but as well very important. And of course, the political reforms, education, anti-corruption, transparency, and so forth.
Absolutely, there's an emphasis, and because we do suffer from the malices of corruption as well in Egypt. So you know, this is one of the things that His Excellency, when we talked last year together about, you mentioned the 3 things: the emphasis on private sector, the anti-corruption, and the small-medium enterprises. And this is an experience that we maybe touched upon in our meeting earlier, when we have the CEMEXs, and I know that there will be big investments from Mexico coming into Egypt on that scale, on the industrial scale. How can we promote the cooperation between small, medium enterprises between Egypt and Mexico? Because I think that's where the emphasis is going to be, not big businesses, but medium businesses.
You're touching, I think, the core point of what a true open market economy means. Is not just because obviously the CEMEXs are very important, Kitsania, of course, Sucarne, some of Tenaris, Tamsa, we have some of these representatives here among us, but the medium and small enterprises are what really move the economy, by the way, at least the Mexican economy. And that's where in ProMexico we have one of our 3 pillars. One is attracting foreign direct investment. The other is promoting of exports and services. And the third one, which is a rather controversial, as you can imagine, is promoting the internationalization of our companies, which is helping Mexican companies to make investments abroad, which is pretty much the opposite of attracting foreign direct investment. But the true meaning of this, first of all, is showing the world, showing your partners, that is not a zero-sum game. That while it's important for Mexico to attract a company from Egypt, from the US, from Germany, or from Russia, it's also important for us to help some of our companies to be out there. And not just the CEMEXs, the Kitsanias or the Cinépolis and so forth, the big ones, but also the medium and small ones. And if you ask me how much of our resources, ProMexico's resources, how much of our effort is devoted to small and medium-sized companies, I would say 85% at least. Those are really the companies that need our help. Those are the ones that need, for example, that our business and trade representatives in Qatar, in Brazil, in so many other countries, actually do the legwork for them. Because they cannot open a business representative or a representative in a place that is 15 or 16 hours away from them. So they literally use our people, our team, to do that legwork for them. To give you an example, last year we helped to establish themselves abroad 76 Mexican companies. And as you can imagine, if you count the really big ones, are no more than 5. So 71 between medium and small companies, were held by ProMexico to establish themselves abroad. Because we understand that's the name of the game.
But let me play a devil's advocate here for a second. Like you said, yes, there is the potential. It is the role of pro-Mexico. It is the role of the Egyptian commercial services. How much can our cooperation on trade and investment be enhanced and increased if we had a pro-Mexico office in Cairo and if we had an Egyptian commercial service office in Mexico City? I mean, we're lacking these two things. Our only commercial offices in Brazil, they speak Portuguese, really. And your other offices, I believe, are in the UAE and in Qatar. So, you know, how like you said, it's very, very difficult. Egypt is a very big market. Why don't you have a presence here? Maybe that can also be a bigger encouragement for.
I think it's of the utmost relevance. We were just talking. I had the pleasure of talking with His Excellency, the ambassador of Chile here. In Egypt, and we're talking about the importance of face-to-face businesses, because a businessman does a business with someone that really, you know, shake hands with it, and you can actually look at their eyes. So it's very important, and for us, it's the next step. Today, we are announcing. Perhaps I'm giving you already the highlight of it, but we're announcing the creation of the Mexico-Egypt Business Council. That's a step forward. The alliance that we're building with Global Trade Matters, that's another step forward. Because it's a way of sharing information. It's a way of helping each other to organize businesses trips, for example, of understanding each other's culture, needs, market size, appetites, etc., etc. Next step for us as well. Yes, it would be great to have a ProMexico office here in Cairo. I think, I mean, if it was for me, I'll have an office in every single country in the world.
We'll give you the space here.
Thank you very much.
You already have the space. No
right now, ProMexico has 48 offices around the world. And every single one was created based in intelligence information, on global trends, on economic trends. Hence the unit that I was telling you about that we have, and as well, hence the importance of building an alliance with Global Trade Matters, for example, because based on that information is where we can really build that office and certainly help an Egyptian authority offices to build one in Mexico. It will be great.
Absolutely. I mean, we can, you know, as private sector think tank, we can always push and try to convince you to do so. I'll ask you the final question, so you can start moving to your next meeting. Like you said, face-to-face is extremely important. Being present on the ground is extremely important. You came, you've been here for a couple of days. You've met people face-to-face from government and private sector. What would be the message when you go back to Mexico that we will see in the headlines in Mexican newspapers about your trip to Egypt?
The message for me is Egypt, just like our country, is going through a very important transformation. Egypt is willing to pay the price to reform its economic infrastructure, their political infrastructure, and therefore it's becoming a strategic partner for Mexico. That would be, for me, the highlight. If I had to choose a headline for a Mexican newspaper, would be Egypt is open for business. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much again. Really appreciate it. Have a safe trip back. I'm sorry I had to not go on the conference. Thank you for having me.